So episode 4 of Andor just dropped on Disney Plus, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your spoiler-packed thoughts on episode 4 of Andor. If you haven't watched the episode yet, you have been warned, and you were warned by the title. Go watch the episode, then come back and join the discussion over here. As a point of reference, I'm actually recording this a week ago before even the first 3 episodes dropped on Disney Plus. I'm actually heading off to a film festival tomorrow, so I just wanted to film a few things ahead because I was able to watch the 4th episode before the show dropped. I watched it twice, wrote a bunch of notes so I could shoot this video in advance. But the important detail about that is I have no idea what the general consensus from viewers has been about this show. I don't know how they responded to the first 3 episodes as I'm shooting this one. I do know everyone I've talked to that's a critic that's watched the first 3 episodes kind of loved it. I think I saw one person that didn't love it. Everyone else was like, yes. One person, I'm not really won over yet. So I don't know if that's going to be the general audience. I don't know how it's going to play out. So I'm discussing this from my point of reference before all of you saw the first 3 episodes. With that said, let's get started talking about it. And in the 4th episode, the plot lines are a little bit more sectionalized. They don't kind of converge together so much, and so I'm going to kind of discuss them separately. So kicking things off, let's talk about Cassian's plot line. So him and the buyer head on off to this mission. Cassian's like, I haven't agreed to join up with you, and he's like, I'll pay you a bunch of money. And you hate these guys. I hate them too. Quit like just kind of picking away at them. Just like, you're gonna die doing this anyway. Why don't you die doing something big, grandiose, and important? So he's like, all right, I'll go along with this. And so he takes him and he drops him off on this planet. He's like, all right, this lady over here, she's not gonna like what I'm doing because I'm changing things up, but she'll go along with it. And he sells him on kind of this one pitch for what the mission is. She goes out there, talks her into it. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you making me take this guy? Sends Cassian over, and they start walking pretty quickly. It's made clear that Cassian misrepresented the mission. It's way more intense than previously mentioned. But Cassian kind of tries to ask her a few questions about who the guy is. Like, we don't talk about it. He doesn't exist. And you start to get like that. How does the early rebellion even look like? How do you like have something like this? Well, you have a lot of secrecy. You have these little units that do stuff, but very few people know even who all is involved. Like, it's very sectionalized, it's very divided up, and of course, most importantly, very secretive. And so even as you kind of go into this, Cassian's realizing, oh crap, I probably should ask that guy more questions. Why I still had him. I didn't even think to think about it. I was just like thinking, where are you taking me? What am I going to do? Man, I should ask him all this stuff. And they show up at the camp, and everyone there is like, what are we doing bringing a new guy in this late? This is not cool. This is always the plan. And there's enough of a logic to it to where they need another person, but also they're like, why would you add someone this late? That normally is not a good plan when you're trying to do some sort of heist break-in mission. You have a big plan with a team that's been working together for a while. You don't normally add someone in at last minute. I personally haven't committed that many heists, but I have seen a lot of heist movies, and I know you're not supposed to do that. And so trying to even wonder, like, what dynamic is kind of going on there? What is it about buyer guy that he felt Cassian had to be on this one and didn't recruit him earlier to make it happen? Or is it just the opportunity showed up like, oh, wow, Cassian is going to be on the run. I think this thing needed more people anyway. And he kind of said that, I was going to pull the plug anyway. You need another person. So is it that it really was kind of the perfect storm to where Cassian was available to be recruited, vulnerable enough to be recruited at the right moment where they needed someone? Seems to be kind of a little bit of that. And the people are real skeptical about him. And even as they move forward, Cassian's kind of skeptical of them, where he asks them about their mission. And they say what they're trying to do, and he's like, you can't do, like, you guys are going to get yourself killed. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a barracks. You don't have the resources to storm a barracks? What are you talking about? And they're like, oh yeah, right. But check this out. They kind of explain it, how exactly it'll work, and the culturally significance of certain things. So it's like, oh, well, this might actually work. Oh, well, the timing is really nice. So there actually wasn't a lot here. It's very much a setup episode for Cassian, where we knew his past life, the first 3 episodes of why he left it, and got building some understanding of who he is and his backstory. And this is setting up this next big mission. It made me wonder, like, is that how this show's kind of structured? That there's kind of like these 3-episode mini arcs. They're all like 90-minute movies. So, movie number 1 is about Cassian's escape and recruitment. Number 2 is about this assault on the barracks, where they have to come up with a heist and then make it happen and escape and get away with it. And then the next one is about whatever happens next. And if that's the case, I think that's a great idea. I've kind of been proposing that's what a bunch of CW shows should have been doing for a while. Like, instead of doing one big bad or Freaks of the Week, do 3-4 multi-episode mini arcs. And do that. So you don't burn through too many villains too quickly or repeat too many villains, but you also don't stretch them out for too long. And it looks like maybe they're doing a little bit of that here, of we're getting some in-depth stuff where it feels like a conflict's introduced, then we build the tensions involved in it, the backdrops, the backstories, conflicts, layers, all that stuff, and then we pay it off. And so things matter because we built to it. Because you have build up, you can have payoff. Because you have tension, you can have release. That's what they did really well with the first 3 episodes, and I think that's what they're doing now. Episode 4 is that next kind of like setup, new conflict, new target, new stuff happening. But on the superficially speaking, the Cassian stuff's a little bit more kind of dull and tame. Moved kind of over to our next plot line, and we have our buyer guy. And so, obviously, at the beginning part of it, he's dropping Cassian off, and then he goes back to his normal life. And shows up, and apparently he shows up, and like the first thing we see him doing is like putting a wig on, and then he walks out at this place where he sells things. And his personality is immediately different. And he's like just a very different guy, all about all this superficial wealth and stuff. And just a totally different energy. And you just kind of see the facade that he's doing on Coruscant. And his next customer comes in, Mon Mothma, Star Wars legend that is from the original trilogy. Then again in Rogue One, where she was kind of running the rebellion. And now we see her before that, before she went all in on rebellion mode. We kind of see her while she's still trying to kind of keep her cover in the Senate. So she goes in, and they go into the back room to try and hide their conversation. And you start to realize, like, she's the funding for what he's doing. Trying to figure out all the pieces, like, how did the rebellion work? How did they get resources? Who funded this? And how did it work? And so you have these senators that are finding these people that have their own covers for what they're doing. And, this guy's on Coruscant, antique dealer, on planet where Andor's dropped off. We don't even talk about him. He doesn't exist to those people that are part of the rebellion. So you see kind of the all these parts of the rebellion, how it worked, how they communicated, how they worked with each other. And they're kind of talking about how there's people everywhere, everyone's watching everything, you can't trust anyone anymore. They are cracking down. You just feel, once again, that tension winding up. And we'll get to the Imperial side of stuff, but even that kind of touches on all of this. It just keeps discussing all the ways in which they're trying to discover anyone turning against the Empire. So we'll kind of follow from there on with Mon Mothma, where she goes home, and I don't know if I fully interpret it, like the idea was that like her husband schedules this dinner get together with a bunch of people that she really doesn't like. It seems like he's probably not in the rebellion. He probably doesn't know what she's doing. Doesn't know that she's part of this whole thing trying to tear down the government. And you see kind of those internal conflicts that kind of go on, like very real conflicts. You're married. What if your spouse loves the privileges that come along with all the riches of the Empire, so they're okay with the tyranny? They're comfortable. They like it. And what you see is all the corruption and evil taking place, and you want to stop it. It's still your spouse. And if you turn against your spouse in this, you also expose yourself as being part of this rebellion against this tyrannical empire. You can't do that. So you just even feel that tension in the marriage with what's kind of going on with them. And like they're talking about where they're going to seat people, and her husband's being like so flippant, like, oh, you're no fun, you'll be at that end anyway, and maybe this, maybe, and he like just doesn't care about any of this stuff that clearly she's emotional about, very passionate about. And he's like, well, whatever. Yeah, you need to calm down. This is no big deal. Well, someone downstairs dropped something, but no one's crying, so we're okay. And so it's just kind of fascinating the way some of those kind of dynamics worked. And you take kind of a character that has only kind of been used as someone running mission briefings for the rebellion. You just got to look into what does their personal life look like? And how did they do all the stuff to get to the position where they're running those rebel briefings? What was that like? And that's where it just like feels more mature, it feels more lived in, it fleshes out the world and makes it feel rooted in something again. And gets kind of back to the normal stuff, not just kind of flashy, reminding us of past Star Wars things. You know, talking about, Mon Mothma's marriage trouble, not as like flashy, not as easy to get people talking on the internet as, Luke Skywalker showing up and Baby Yoda and Ahsoka finally in live action. But it also makes the world have reality to it again, like feel like a real place. And when you're taught, so much of Star Wars actually is about the politics of it all. It's about an evil government and people trying to overturn it. And it always was discussing the Senate and things like, from the get-go, we're talking about the Senate being disbanded and things like that. So that's always been part of it. And the prequels, cranked that up to this whole other level. George Lucas wasn't always good at writing that stuff. It always hasn't been handled in a way that's intriguing, but you bring in a writer that's actually very good at thrillers, and all of a sudden, it works really nicely. So, other one to talk about in here, Officer Guy. So, as it turns out, when you lead a mission to arrest one guy, and you get like 6-7 people killed, have a whole community turn against the police force or corporate security or whatever, they don't like you very much. And so they have this meeting where you've got the kind of leader of the actual troops, young Officer Guy, and the old guy in charge that wasn't there, that wasn't a part of any of this, and they're all got reprimanded, in trouble. The old guy's like, I didn't have anything to do with this. What am I doing here? And he's like, Imperials are like, exactly. You didn't have anything to do with this. You were incompetent. You didn't handle it. And so then this buffoon took over and everything just totally trashes them in the way he kind of discusses all of it. And it just puts them in their place immediately. And someone tries to chime in just a little bit like, don't say anything. You guys are idiots. I don't want to hear anything you're saying. But the big important end result was the Imperials are taking over. So that's the thing that the old guy was trying to stop. What he wanted to avoid happening was Imperials taking over. The Imperials being the ones to run the area. And so he's keeping a bunch of things secret, trying to run it himself, and trying to keep people's eyes off everything they're doing. Young guy blew all of it because he did the exact thing that would draw Imperial attention and make Imperials go, we're taking that thing over, and that's what happens. And so then they have another follow-up scene where he goes to home to his mother, slaps him and hugs him, and kind of even wonder exactly what it's like. What's the backstory there of a mother that responds that way? What is she thinking and feeling? What exactly we're watching in that interaction there, and where's this character going? How are they going to use this guy? What's the plan here? And it's just a fascinating scene because it's not like this big plot scene that changes things around perspectives. But that's once again it's about the characters and the layers and the responses to things. So this guy that was so cocky and arrogant so early on, but also insecure, pretty clearly insecure too, but just trying to make his mark, and he fails horribly at it. Just horribly. And he goes home to his mother, which is on the one hand such a human thing to, or it is just such a human thing to do, to kind of do that, with your tail between your legs. Kind of final big kind of plot line in here, we start the Imperial side of the story, to where during this Imperial briefing, you kind of get the idea of how their security kind of works. They have the old guy that's kind of like giving these speeches and monologues and talking down to everyone. You just kind of get this very clear vibe of what they're trying to do and how they perceive of things. And then this incident on Cassian's planet comes up, and they just kind of casually mention the little doodad that Cassian wasn't able to pick up. And this, you just see on this girl's face, like her eyes get big and she starts paying attention. The gears start turning, and it sets in motion her plot line that we don't really even fully know exactly what it is. So she goes off and she's trying to leverage that to gain access to be able to look at the reports because of this. And eventually the guy turns her down. So they have a meeting with the superior guy, and she kind of says in that, I think there's a rebellion forming. I'm seeing little clues, little hints that there's a rebellion happening. If you take this and consider it with these other things, the pattern is a more organized rebellion against the Empire than we realize. They kind of shoot her down. Like, we need more concrete evidence than just your speculation to move forward. So clearly this is going to be a pretty significant plot line of she's one of the key Imperials trying to track down the rebellion, stop the rebellion earliest on. And one of the key elements of what pulls her into that, even into the story, is Cassian wasn't able to pick up that box in episode 3. So that's what I was talking about in the episode, where in the moment, buyer guy's like, let's get out of here. Cassian's like, no, I need to get that thing, because he wants to grab it because he thinks it's valuable. The guy thinks Cassian is what's valuable. He doesn't want Cassian to die. That's his primary concern. Keep that guy alive because I want to recruit him. Cassian wants to get the box. They don't get the box. It's left behind. That sets out this whole other plot line on the show. Kind of pulls this other character into this little journey. And I think that's when you have like quality writing. Layered writing, or little details that the show pulls your attention to, and it makes total sense in the moment, but it does something to draw your attention to it. And then in the next episode you realize, man, if they grabbed that thing, she wouldn't be hunting him down right now. She wouldn't be on the trail of this little piece of the rebellion. That's the type of writing in shows that I like. Little details matter. Someone overhears a phone call. Someone sees on a little report that they're from a specific planet, and he heard a story from his girlfriend in the past. And that leads to something. Someone doesn't pick up a box and a doodad. And you see that kind of here. So she's trying to track down the rebellion, and they're not paying a ton of attention to it. But you kind of get the vibe of how all of this works. So 4 episodes in, I really dig in this show. Because it's a well-written, mature, thriller, espionage show set in the world of Star Wars. And so you have this great established mythology that's kind of, in a certain sense, also kind of superficial in our understanding of it. And so you bring in like an A-list screenwriter to build that out, the rebellion. Keep in mind, I'm someone that's been extremely critical of the fact that Star Wars kind of keeps going back to this time frame. They keep going back to the between Attack of the Clones and A New Hope. They just keep going and doing shows and movies in that time frame. I'm pretty annoyed by that. Like, what? Can't we go somewhere else? And a lot of them, like Obi-Wan, I think really dropped the ball and didn't live up to it. And that was with Obi-Wan. That was like, that's A material. That's their top stuff. Dropped the ball, I'd say. This one, Cassian Andor. Not the lead, maybe second lead in a movie infamous for not having good characters. No one was asking for a Cassian Andor series. And I think maybe that's exactly why it's probably going to work. Because when you do a story about Obi-Wan, there are all these expectations, and there's all these temptations to do the easy, cheap fan service. With Cassian, it's not. it's kind of like a blank slate of a character that you know has a questionable morality. The first thing he does in Rogue One is murder someone. Questionable morality, but at least pointed in the right direction of ending this evil empire, and dies a martyr hero. But we don't know a lot about him, so it's like a blank slate. And we've kind of spent time in the rebellion, but always through the kind of the perspective of Jedis and Force users. Even on the show Rebels, it was through Force users. And so what about the actual spy side to it? That was the thing that made Rogue One kind of a really fascinating prequel. Is they took a line out of the opening crawl and like, how did those guys get that? What's that story? That's a story right there. That's interesting. Let's dive into that. But that also exposes, that's a whole world of Star Wars to be explored, of what were normal people like? What was the actual like social political dynamics in random communities? And what about the local authorities versus the Imperial rule? What was that like? What was like, when did the Empire realize there was a rebellion taking place? And how did the rebellion communicate? Those actually are interesting questions. Not if you want to do like a superficial show, no. But if you want to tell like a well-written adult drama, that's cool stuff. So totally dug it. 4 episodes in, can't wait to see the next one. And unfortunately for me, because I watched the first 4 episodes a week before the original 3 episodes premiered, that means I have like a 3-week gap between seeing episode 4 when I get to see episode 5. So that's a little bit of torture for me. That's critic problems. I got to see it early, but there are negative sides to that at the exact same time. Anyway, let me know what you thought down below. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.